People will put themselves on massive restrictive diets.
Do we actually have to reduce our calorie intake as we get older?
Once we learn to manage insulin on our way to weight loss, there's nothing wrong with you. If you haven't made you a priority, this is one of the biggest things I want women to know.
Whatever beautiful means to you, this time of the month will help you find it and live it. What are some of the mistakes? You're giving us a lot of do's, right? What are some of the common mistakes that women do when they're trying to manage the belly fat? Again, especially with the overload of conflicting information that you see on social platforms.
Yeah, so the first one is people will put themselves on massive, restrictive diets. And they'll be like, okay, that's it. I'm no longer going to eat any bread, any pasta, and not really, not looking at the overall macronutrients. So they become very hungry, right? Cortisol levels go through the roof. What do you think happens? The last thing the body will do is shed any weight. Isn't that ironic, right? So that's one of the first things, is this radicalization of these diets, right? Some things work for some people. We're not one size fits all again. So that's the first thing. The second one is the constant snacking. This is a biggie. I talked about how once we learn to manage insulin, we are on our way to weight loss. As soon as we snack, we recruit insulin, right? So if I snack a little bit at 10:30, then I snack, well, of course, I'll have a lunch maybe at 1 o'clock, then I'm going to be snacking at 3, then I'll have dinner, and then I'll have a little snack at 7:30. We have raised insulin levels like Canada's Wonderland, right? So what we want to do is really have these windows where the body actually is burning fat as fuel. And you need to have some windows for that, which leads us to
intermittent fasting. Let's go there. Yes, let's talk about that.
It's a choosy and juicy topic. And there is a lot of evidence that intermittent fasting has a lot of benefits for humans. We were also designed for fasting, right? Think about it, right? Loblaws was not around the corner.
No.
2,000 years ago.
Meat wasn't in your freezer. You had to go hunt it, and that didn't happen too often. The kill didn't happen too often.
That's right, exactly. So we are meant to use reserves as a way to burn energy. So that is not an unhealthy thing. What happens at midlife is that intermittent fasting sometimes has the opposite effect on women. That some of the aggressive windows of non-eating, such as 16 not eating and 8 of eating, can actually really raise cortisol levels. We're back to the opposite of what we desired in the first place. So for some people, it really helps because it actually also, quite frankly, reduces the amount of calories that we're consuming. So often I say the answer might not be in the intermittent fasting for you because it doesn't seem to be working and your cortisol levels are through the roof. But we need to start looking at what you are eating, how much you are eating, and how you are food combining. All of these things will actually
matter.
Yes. So intermittent fasting, yes or no? I always say a minimum of 12 hours. It will also help you sleep better, right? It will help your liver do all of the functions that it needs to perform. So that's a minimum. 13, 14 hours, no problem. You should not need to even eat before a morning walk and all that, right? We always think, oh my God, I'm so hungry, I will die. And the fact is that you could live about 21 days without eating. So we're just more used to the frequency. So, but for some women, fasting really helps them because it controls no snacking and will not jump into all kinds of foods. So it can be helpful for some.
So that's a really key point here. Sometimes it's in the nuance of things, right? You touched upon the caloric intake as well, and that might not be a popular thing to discuss or think about. But as we age, does our caloric, so sometimes people say, I'm eating the same, I'm exercising, nothing's changing. What's happening? So do we actually have to reduce our calorie intake as we get older?
Our body composition will have a tendency to change, right? I mentioned the role of muscle loss, and it is through muscle fitness that the metabolism is set. Right? So that means how much calories I burn every day. It's actually been debunked that our metabolism slows down dramatically, right? It does slow down, but much later. Or, we'd love to think that it really starts earlier, therefore it compensates. And the fact is actually our muscle composition that is triggering this slowdown of the furnace, the furnace burning.
Yeah.
So, but the fact is that we should be mindful, if we are less active, to be consuming less calories, like to be snacking less. All the beverages that we are intaking that have all these calories.
Yeah, those are
Right?
insidious. We don't
Very
notice.
sneaky, very, very sneaky. And that all goes into fat storage because it's basically sugar,
And
automatic.
constant spiking, which is what you're, the
Exactly.
constant insulin spike. That's really
Yeah.
good. So little less treadmill, more weight training for sure.
Yes.
Okay, so any myths that you're dying to debunk that I haven't, brought up? So maybe, did I miss any myths?
Well, one of the biggest one is that we believe that the decay is happening because of aging, and it is not because of aging. It is because of neglect. So this is one of the biggest thing I want women to know, is that there's nothing wrong with you. You've just not had the time or the energy, or you haven't made you a priority, right? So you can get back your fitness. And we see it every day because there are people doing it, right? And you don't have to be extremely rich or powerful, have all kinds of crazy resources. You can do it. You can do it with a modest budget as well. But it is not aging the problem. The problem is when we don't take care of that beautiful thing called our body, that we get a lot of the negative effects. But especially in midlife, this is a beautiful time for us to just get back in the driver's seat and head to where we want to go.
So Annie, on this show, at this time of the month, we really focus on the idea that we're not alone. Menopause, midlife can feel pretty lonely. And when you're surrounded by social platforms and friends and colleagues who talk about the latest fad, the thing they're doing, and you see results on them, you may not see it on you. So are we alone? We're not.
Isn't it the most frustrating thing? You see people trying things and it works for them. And then when you try them, you're like, what is wrong with me? What am I doing wrong?
Am I broken?
Exactly, right? And the fact is that health is not one size fits all. So one is, do know that it is normal that what may have worked for a segment in the population may not work for you for all kinds of reasons, right? So that's the number one thing. The number two thing is to really get the support. At midlife, more than ever, this is so important. I like to say, be in the energy of what you desire, right? So seek the groups and the environment that you need, and do seek a professional. Do seek a registered dietitian or holistic nutritionist, so that you can actually get something that will be customized for you based on your history, based on being able to say, you know what, I tried that restrictive, intermittent fasting, and it was a complete disaster, and I did not lose any weight. So we're going to have cues in terms of how your body is reacting, and then we can customize a plan for you that will include more than food, by the way, that will include also lifestyle, right? Because we may not have realized that, your stress level is through the roof, and this is what's preventing you, right? So we need to have a holistic view of your health and present you with options so that you don't feel all alone, so that you're not frustrated, and also that it does not also become a bigger problem with some metabolic diseases.
Typically, when you work with a client, how long does it take to start to see results? Whether small to big, but when do you notice the results?
The first month.
The first month. That's
Yes.
amazing.
Yeah, the first month, because we are looking at stress management, sleep, activity, and nutrition. Nutrition is only one part. This is probably, you were asking before about, the mistakes that women do is that too much emphasis on food and we forget the other parts. So really looking at all of these protocols to really elevate one's health is going to give you results the first month, because we are able to give you more energy, you're making better choices, and it really is a bit of a domino effect in that respect.
Women tend to be really hard on themselves and very punishing. There is a self-punishing culture, right? Restrict. Is there a more, and that scares people. So is there a less scary way to look at how to make those changes that doesn't feel like you're punishing your body?
I think that we never can get ever any great results from a place of punishment. A lot of what we talk about in my practice is self-compassion, loving where we're at so that we can get to where we want in even more loving way, in a self-compassion way. But this is a lot of years of deprogramming that we are talking about. Women are extremely harsh about themselves. Number one thing I get in my practice is, I hate the way I feel and I hate the way I look. Right? So we want to start having self-compassion for what your body has done to get you through all the things, whether it was motherhood, whether careers, life events. Your body has gotten you here. So acknowledging all of that is the first step.
And for some people, they might feel it's unsurmountable. So what do you tell a person who thinks, I'm too far along my path to get back to where I'd like to be, or to get not back, but to a place? What do you tell that person?
There's 1,000 stories of women that changed the course of their life, whether we're starting at 45, 55, 65. I have clients that are even older than that who see incredible results in transformation. So I make sure that they see all of these beautiful examples, because there's nothing special about these women. They just were fortunate to put the resources and the support, as we talked about. It is never done alone. So that's a big thing that I want women to know, is that there is help. There are resources out there that are not fad-based and, really based on science and evidence.
We're going to play a little bit of the old David Letterman style things, but we'll make it 3. Top 3 things to avoid.
God, that's so hard. Because I like to say there are no bad foods. I would say artificial sweeteners, all sodas, and ultra-processed foods.
Oh my goodness. So you just made me realize something. You said no sodas. That's going to make some people upset. What about wine? We didn't talk about wine.
Let's talk
and
about
the
wine.
data on wine.
Let's talk about
Because
wine.
we
Give
like
us
a
one of
little
your
bit
questions.
of wine. It was one of my questions. Yeah.
Yes. Let's talk about wine. The new standards and recommendations from a health standpoint is basically 2 glasses of wine or 2 alcoholic consumptions per week for women. I know a lot of people were very sad to hear that, because I believe the last ones were up to 7 or 6 or 7, and then we've gone to 2. And the fact is that alcohol is difficult for women to metabolize. So that is the issue. I'm French. I come from a background of red wine with every meal. This is how my parents and I grew up. 2 recommendations for women. If you're going to have wine, have it with food. It's a lot easier on insulin level. We're back to that.
Yes.
So really much helpful if you're going to have it with a little bit of food. And make sure in that a little bit of food that there is fiber and protein.
All right. So diminish, but don't give up the joy of perhaps having a glass of wine. Just have it with food.
Exactly.
Maybe we can adapt to that. I mean, the link to cancer is pretty...
It's clear.
It's clear. So just a little bit of managing our time of when we do it. Okay. 3 things that are good for you. Top 3. I mean, there are many.
Yes.
Your top 3 favorites.
Love your fats. People always think that that's very funny coming from a nutritionist, but fats are great for you. So embracing extra virgin olive oil, very easy to integrate into your diet. Fantastic. Nuts, especially for women with, a lot of the minerals in which we can be easily deficient. Nuts, especially Brazil nuts, right? High in selenium, great for brain health. So embrace your nuts. And then I would say the other one, because I'm a nutritionist, maybe I will be so predictable, but definitely embrace your vegetables. Embrace your colors. It is a no-brainer because of the incidence of cancer and metabolic diseases.
I think that that's a really beautiful way to segue into the following question. We like to think, what makes us feel beautiful? And we always ask our guests that. So, Annie, what makes you feel beautiful?
Oh, that's one I've had a hard time in my life. But I would say feeling strong is one. And the other one is really living my life as the best I can in terms of my values.
Thank you for being on this episode, and we look forward to more with you.
Thank you.
Mealtime can be pretty tough to know what to cook. And we're really, as a family, trying to move away from traditional sources of animal-based protein and move towards plant-based proteins. But tofu, for example, can be really hard to have it taste as good as some of your favorite restaurants. And my sister is the one who told me about Tofu Bud. It's a tofu press and it is a game changer. Why? Because it presses the water out of your tofu, and that is the secret to making crispy, chewy, and tasty tofu. And Tofu Bud, it's a small Instagram account. You can buy it online. It's not very expensive. If you're looking for alternative options, a tofu press is not a bad thing to try.